Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mona Fontella. I am with Royal Business Bank, and today I will be conducting a financial education workshop on taxes, and this is in partnership with Ideal CDC. We are in the first quarter of 2023, which is perfect timing for this workshop, because if you're watching this during that time frame, January through April is what is considered tax time. Okay, and this workshop is going to talk about 5 specific areas. First, we're going to try to understand what income taxes are. Okay, secondly, why are they important? Third, who must file taxes? Examples to benefits of filing taxes. And then lastly, filing the actual income taxes. So the first topic, let's first understand taxes and what they are. So many of you, when you start a job, you have to fill out what's called a tax return. And this is a form that is submitted to the IRS that reports what your income is and the pertinent tax information that is needed. Okay, and that form is normally known as the 1040. Again, each of you will receive a 1040 form if you are employed when you begin this job, and this is so that the IRS can understand what the tax deduction should be with your income, okay? It is determined the amount of tax your employer is going to withhold from each of your paycheck or your monthly and annual income. Okay, so that 1040 is important because you're basically telling not just the employer, but the IRS how much taxes they're going to take out from your income. Okay, most income is taxable. That is important to know. So most income is subject to taxes. Okay, now there is what's called income that is tax exempt. And this is a part of your income that isn't taxable. Let me give you a couple of examples of what that is. If you do charitable contributions, that is considered not taxable or tax exempt. Okay. Some educational expenses is also considered as tax exempt or not taxable. Okay. So those are just some examples. Now, after the tax exempt is taken out of your check, then you are left with what is called adjusted gross income, okay? And your adjusted gross income is calculated after these deductions are made. Okay, so moving on and continuing on with understanding your tax income. So as I went over, your taxable income is going to be what your adjusted gross income is minus the tax exemptions, okay? And I gave you a couple of examples, education being one of them, and also charitable contributions, okay? Every taxpayer receives what's called a standard deduction. If you're considered single or you're filing single, that deduction is $12,950. Now, if you're married and filing joint, that amount is $25,900, okay? Standard deduction, what is that? A standard deduction is the amount of money that the IRS or the government will not tax, okay? And the exemptions, just remember, these are amount that taxpayers can claim that, again, will give them not just an exemption, but what's called a tax credit, okay? When you claim yourself, that can be considered an exemption. When you claim your spouse, that is also considered an exemption. A commonly known exemption, children, they're considered dependents. They are also exemptions. So these are amounts, or these are areas that reduces the taxes that you have to pay, okay? Once you know what your taxable income is, then you can determine how much taxes you owe based on the number of exemptions. The next topic we're going to talk about is why are taxes important? So why do we have to file taxes, and why are taxes even important? As you know, taxes provide fundings to programs and services that assist the state in various ways, such as healthcare, welfare, law enforcement, fire departments, public programs like job training, and most commonly known, schools and parks. The taxes you pay fund all of these state programs. So taxes also provide support for local and federal governments, and they fund essential services that benefit everybody, all citizens. And they provide services for repairs to highways, things like national defense, police and fire protection, and also public schools, just to name a few, okay? The more services the government provides, the more taxpayers have to pay for them. Recently, California has undergone a long period of storms that has caused damage. You've seen in the news recently that a lot of our freeways have suffered damages that have potholes. It would be your tax dollars that's actually going to be used to repair these potholes. So that is just an example of what your tax dollars are used for. Now that you know what your tax dollars are used for and why it's important, I want to talk a little bit about why taxes are important to you. First and foremost, there's a big misconception that when you file taxes, chances are you're going to owe. Now, when you file taxes, when you fill out that 1040 and you fill it out correctly as far as what your exemption should be, you will get money back. And that is one of the biggest benefits of why filing taxes is so important. You may get money back when you file your taxes. For example, if your employer withholds taxes from your paycheck on a regular basis and you file correctly, you're going to get a refund when you file your taxes, okay? Another reason, and another very important reason why you should file taxes, is you avoid interest and penalties. For those of you who wonder, what happens if I don't file for 1 year or 2 years? What happens? What ends up happening if you don't file timely and you actually owe money? You're going to begin to accrue penalties and interest that can be costly. So you can avoid interest and penalties by filing an accurate tax return and paying taxes you owe in the right way before the deadline. We're going to talk a little bit more about the deadline because if you live in the state of California, there are certain counties in California where there has been an extension, okay? Now, if you can't pay, say, taxes that you owe, you can file what's called an extension, where you work with the IRS to pay that money back over time instead of letting it accrue interest and you having to pay penalties, okay? Another reason why it's important to pay your taxes and why it's important to you is because you are protecting your credit. For those of you who don't know, if you don't file your taxes on time or if you wait years to file taxes, there could potentially be a lien placed on your home if you don't pay that, okay? So I know some people avoid paying their taxes because they may owe money. Just remember, if you owe money, you can file for an extension or ask for some kind of a payment plan to pay that money back. And I guarantee you the interest that they'll charge you for a payment plan will be a lot less than having to pay the penalties if you don't file correctly, okay? Another reason why it's important to file your taxes is because you can actually get credit for financial aid and you can apply for financial aid. So an accurate tax return can make it easier to apply for certain educational expenses that you have for your children. When you pay your taxes and you do it on time, you build your Social Security benefit. That is not something that's commonly known. But when you pay your taxes, you actually ensure that that's going to be calculated in your Social Security benefit. Get an accurate picture of your income. When you apply for a loan, lenders look at your tax return to figure your interest rate and decide your ability to repay something. So when you apply for a car loan, when you apply for a home loan, for those of you who own a business and you apply for a small business loan, they will ask you for your tax return. So it's important to file taxes because it's those taxes that's going to help that creditor determine whether or not you're going to get a loan and what the rate is that they're going to charge you. And then lastly, but something that I think people take for granted, is peace of mind. When you file your tax return, you know you're doing the right thing and you're not constantly worried about what's going to happen with these tax returns or these years that I don't file, what's going to happen and will I get penalized and how much will that be? So peace of mind is important when you consider why it's important to file taxes. The next topic we're going to cover is who must file. Who has to file tax returns, okay? If you have an income below the standard deduction threshold for 2022, okay, because again, although we're in 2023, you're filing your 2022 tax return, okay? If you're single and you're filing, that threshold is $12,950. If you're married, that income threshold is $25,900, okay? If you have or you're within that threshold, you may be required to file a tax return. However, you may want to file anyway if you're under, right? Because you can take advantage of several benefits that the government or the state would provide, and that can reduce the taxes for the income that you owe. For example, over COVID, during that COVID era or period, the government actually issued more tax credits for singles and for families because of the challenges that COVID had given all of us, okay? So again, even if you're under that threshold of $12,950 if you're single, or if you're married, $25,900, you may still want to file because that makes you eligible for certain benefits that the government or the state will give you. Keep in mind that if you worked during 2022, the taxes that were withheld from your paycheck, you may be able to get all of that over withholding as a refund. So make sure that your W-2 forms from your employers are filled out correctly and that the tax form that you submitted has the information that you want withheld from your paychecks. Now, I talked a little bit about why it's important to file taxes, who should file taxes. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the benefits and examples to filing taxes. Some examples and benefits to filing your taxes, one of which is child tax credit, which is probably one of the biggest credits you'll receive when you file your taxes. Child tax credit, also known as CTC, is worth and can give you a maximum of $2,000 for every qualifying child or dependent that you have. So you can get up to $1,400 refunded to you when you file your taxes. These are for people who earn less than $200,000 a year. Another benefit to filing your taxes is called EITC. This is Earned Income Tax Credit. And this credit helps low to moderate income workers and families get a tax break. So if you qualify, you can use this credit to reduce the taxes that you owe and possibly increase the refund or the money back that you're going to get. Another benefit is child or dependent care credit. Did you know that if you pay someone to care for your child, that you can actually get credit for that? So if you are a qualifying person, right, and you and your spouse are filing jointly, you actually can get credit for child and dependent care expenses. So that is an amount that actually you can get credit for that can reduce the amount of taxes that you owe. You may be eligible to claim this credit if you've paid expenses for a child care qualifying individual, right? You could also claim this credit if you or your spouse lived in the United States for more than half of the year. However, there are special rules that apply, and this is just for military personnel that are stationed outside of the U.S. And the last topic we're going to talk about, which is probably the most important, is actually filing your income taxes. First, I want to talk about the due date of filing your taxes, which is normally around April. For this year, it was April 18th, 2023. As I told you earlier in this workshop, the state of California, in certain counties, have extended the deadline to file taxes to October of 2023. Now, if you don't know if the county that you live in is eligible for this extension, you can go onto the IRS website and you can check if your county is one of those qualifying counties, okay? Now, when you file your income taxes, you can actually go to a place where filing taxes is free. This service or this program is called VITA, V-I-T-A, which is an acronym for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. This particular program that is offered by certain organizations will actually prepare your taxes for free. You will get your refund and you will get your taxes filed for free. And this is an IRS volunteer program. And they prepare, again, these basic tax files so that you as individuals and families can file your taxes, okay? VITA sites offer free tax help who need assistance in preparing their own tax returns, including people who generally make $60,000 or less. They also help people with disabilities file their taxes, and more importantly, they help people who have limited English speaking capability to help file their taxes as well, okay? Now, when you file your tax returns, of course, you have the option to self-prepare and file your taxes, okay? My Free Taxes allows people to file their federal and state taxes for free. So this is a program that you can, and it allows you to file your taxes for free. People may file their taxes on their own, which typically take filers about an hour or less to complete, depending on how familiar you are with all of the forms that you have and which forms you need to enter your tax information. There's also the option of people having their taxes filed by someone else, and this usually involves having to pay someone. Now, I don't recommend that you hire someone to file your taxes if your income is $60,000 or less. I really recommend that you find a site that offers a VITA program because, again, they'll file your taxes for free. But the only caveat to that is you have to earn $60,000 or less, okay? Now, if you do decide to self-file your taxes, it'll typically take about 2 to 3 weeks for files to get processed and for you to get information from the IRS regarding your return or potentially money that you owe. Thank you all once again for joining this workshop about taxes. I hope that this was helpful to you, and we'll see you in the next workshop. Thank you.